Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Welcome, councillors, and welcome those of you that are watching online. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands we are meeting on today. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. We are meeting tonight in a hybrid style, so to speak, with councillors in the council chamber with some of our officers, and officers and members of the public also joining us virtually online. Community participation will continue virtually, obviously, through the WebEx platform until we can safely welcome everyone back to Town Hall in person. This meeting is being streamed live via Council's webcast page and on our Facebook site also. Streams with recordings of council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced, republished without the written permission of council, prior permission also. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we'll adjourn the meeting for a short period of time to resolve any issues. I remind attendees that any member of public addressing council must extend due courtesy and respect to council and the processes under which it operates, and must take direction from myself, the chair, whenever called upon to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive or objectionable and aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of council staff or relate to a matter outside the powers of council. Tonight's presiding officer is our CEO, Peter Smith. All councillors are here, welcoming Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Copsey from Lake Ward, Councillor Consolo and Councillor Martin from Gateway Ward, and Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor Baxter, and Councillor Clark from Canal Ward. No apologies for item number 1 to be noted. We now move to item number 2, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, the minutes of the 2nd of February council meeting have been circulated. Any questions from you? If not, I'll move the motion to confirm that, and Deputy Mayor Baxter will second the motion. And I'll put that to you. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. Item number 3, councillors, is declaration of conflict of interests. There being none to be declared, I move now to item number 4, which is public question time and submissions. We'll now hear from all public questions from that have been submitted and public comments on the report items. All submitters are attending the meeting through our WebEx platform tonight, and statements to be read by an officer on behalf of members of the public who've submitted them, or in the event we have some technical difficulties. So I now call upon Vivian Ness, who has submitted a question to council. Vivian, welcome to the meeting. Can you hear us?
Through you, Mayor. I don't think we have Vivian online at the moment.
No problem.
But
if you could read that.
I do have a statement to be read on behalf. And the statement reads, my family moved to our address in Langridge Street, Middle Park in 1952, and we have paid rates here for 70 years. I have always valued the services provided by the council. The staff are always courteous and helpful. When you consider the demands made on this area by the citizens from other parts of Melbourne, it is amazing how quickly our streets and recreational areas recover to normality for our benefit. This does not happen miraculously, but by the preparation and hard work of officers. Our rates provide the infrastructure necessary. I, as a ratepayer, am not represented by collections of individuals. My question to the meeting is, will the council ignore people who do not represent ratepayers of Port Phillip, and if necessary, increase rates so that we can continue to enjoy the facilities provided by our council?
Thank you for reading that. I'll call upon Peter Liu to answer that question. Peter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Please go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Vivian, for your question. Officers value feedback from all our community members. Rates revenue is a key funding source for community services and used to upkeep our $3.2 billion worth of community infrastructure. Our 10-year financial outlook assumes rate increases linking to the rates cap. Despite this, the outlook projects a funding deficit up to $103 million, which will try to address this funding gap, with efficiencies, savings and and review our service delivery and priorities. Inflation for the first 6 months of 21-22 was 1.9%, and if that trend continues, the full year projection would be something like about 3.8%. This is certainly much greater than the rates cap of 1.75% announced by the Minister of Local Government in December for 22-23 year. This will place further financial pressure on councils' financial resources. We also may have to invest more in the local economy and social support in a post-COVID normal. In December, Council agreed to engage on the introduction of new waste services such as food or garden and glass recycling, which will increase our cost base if endorsed. We also propose to change our rating system from net annual value to capital improved value with differential rating and a flat waste charge separated from general rates. The benefit of this is to enable Council to address major valuation shifts, which may cause unfair rates distribution to certain property classes, and to fund new waste services. Again, if Council agrees to these whole initiatives, then we will need to factor that into the budgets. We're in the middle of developing draft budget 22-23, and certainly one of the key considerations is the amount of rates revenue that is needed. No decision has been made on the rates increase for 22-23, as we're still in the early phase. Naturally, we will always try to balance Council's financial sustainability and community affordability. We value and welcome your feedback on the draft budget when it will be released in April. Thank you.
No, thank you. I call upon Rachel Scotland submitting a question to Council. Rachel, if you can hear us, if you could state your name, your suburb, and limit your question or comment to 3 minutes, please.
Oh, hi, my name's Rachel and I live in Elwood. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My question relates to Council's proposal to sell 3 early childhood education centres. Elwood Children's Centre has run at capacity for several years. This year, however, we are struggling to fill places, especially in our 3 and 4-year-old programs, as new families are not applying and an increasing number of existing families have decided to leave the centre to relocate their children to other centres that are not the subject of this proposal. Should this trend continue, the financial impact to the centre will be significant and sustained and will result in job losses and other cost-cutting measures. When Council officers advised the committee of Elwood Children's Centre of their intention to sell the property in late November 2021, they acknowledged that this would be a likely side effect and promised to support the centre during this time. To date, there has been no support provided and no detail on what this support may be. So my question to Council is, how and when will the Council be providing support to Elwood Children's Centre? Thank you.
Thanks very much for your question, Rachel. I call upon Tony Keenan to answer that question, please.
Through you, Mayor. No decision has yet been taken by Council on the 3 centres. Council is still consulting. Just generally, most childcare centres in the city, certainly the Council ones, are seeing a drop in enrolment this year on previous years, which is, we think, more to do with COVID and people coming back from COVID. Certainly our enrolments are down, but certainly officers did say that Council would discuss with the centres if a decision was made to sell and close them, what support there would be available. And this is one of the things that Council officers will be consulting with centres on over the coming weeks, that if their decision is taken to sell centres, what support would be in place.
Thanks, Mr. Keenan. I call Tony Keenan, rather. I call upon Kieran Wilcox, please. Kieran, can you hear us?
Through you, Mayor. We have tech support on the phone to Kieran at the moment, so maybe if we move to
we'll
the
come
next.
back if that's possible. Let's hold on the line. So next up we have Dan McKay. and you're asking a question of Council. Dan, how can you hear us? No, not tonight.
Through you, Mayor.
Okay.
We seem to have a few absences tonight, but I'm happy to...
Is it a technical issue or they haven't turned up this evening?
Not sure, we're just working through that with tech support, but I'm happy to read the question submitted.
Is there any
Dan.
chance they'll be back online, or are they just not online? I just want to be clear because I'd prefer them to come online if there's an opportunity to do so. They haven't answered? Okay, that's fine. As long as we've made an attempt to contact them, if you could read the question, that would be great.
Certainly, through you. The question reads, did anyone from Council ever explicitly ask the state government prior to 1 December 2021 whether funding would be available to upgrade any of the 3 centres Council are currently proposing to sell? If not, why not? Further, I understand the VSBA has indicated that an amount of money will be available per centre for upgrades. What is this amount?
Thank you for the question, Dan, and I'll ask Joanne McNeill to answer that for you.
Sorry.
Tony?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony Keenan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, council officers worked with the Department of Education staff from the South East Victorian region from late October 2020 to April 2021 to develop the kindergarten infrastructure support. And during that time, there was a number of discussions held regarding funding available. And officers then met with the VSBA in relation to funding that was available. No funding for these centres were applied for, or any centres, because the requirement of the funding at that time was that the buildings would have to be completed within 18 months and opened. So no proposal on any childcare centre had been taken to council at that stage. So that would be an impossible timeline to meet. So no funding was applied for. I can report that officers have met with officers of council have met with staff from the VSBA and held general discussions around funding that might be available. There's no specific amounts mentioned, but they referred us to the building block guidelines as a guide, but that there's some flexibility around that. So officers will continue to work with VSBA staff on that.
Thank you, Tony. I now call upon Nick Smith submitting a question to Council. And Nick, you're online at the moment.
Hello, Council. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. If you could just state your name, Nick, and the suburb that you reside in, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Nick Smith. I live in Elwood and I'm the Treasurer of Elwood's Children's Centre. I just wanted to also note that I have the text from Kieran's question as well. If he's not able to get on, I'm happy to read that on his behalf.
No, that's fine. We have his question. We just wanted to give every opportunity for him to come online. So if you could just state your question or comment, I'll make sure you keep to the 3 minutes. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor. Council officers recently provided a detailed breakdown of capital expenditure and maintenance undertaken on 46 Tennyson Street, and I'd like to thank council officers for doing that. For the councillors' information, a little over $342,000 has been spent on capital works and maintenance on the property since July 2014. In that same time period, Elwood Children's Centre has paid a little over $595,000 to council in both maintenance and infrastructure levies, a difference in council's favour of a little over $251,000. Council officers have recently mentioned on the Have Your Say portal that the council additionally supports centres by providing waived rent and the quality subsidy, so the net support provided by council is positive. This viewpoint fails to include the management services provided free of charge by the community, which is the parents, to operate and run the centres themselves, without which the council would not be able to provide a service. That said, however, infrastructure and maintenance levies should only be used for infrastructure and maintenance purposes. Why has the council only reinvested 57% of the money paid to them for the sole purpose of maintenance and infrastructure support since 2014?
Thanks very much for the question, Nick. I'll seek guidance from Tony Keenan and Chris Carroll about who's best to answer this. Joe McNeill?
Yeah, Joe McNeill will answer in the first instance, and I'll add to it if I need to.
Thanks, Chris Carroll. Joe McNeill, if you could start with the first component of the question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question. The levy is used to undertake works as required to all of the childcare centres. And routine maintenance as well as reactive maintenance is covered within this, also renewal works. The maintenance occurs as required, both planned and reactive, so expenditure does go up and down each year. The renewal of assets is always lumpy in that over time there are periods where, particularly for buildings, there are different elements of the building requiring renewal at any given time. So for instance, the roof might need replacement in 15 to 20 years. So funds are then accumulated each year and spent as needed on the different parts of the buildings. There might be a large lump sum spent in 1 year, then nothing for a particular building for a couple of years, then a smaller amount depending on what renewal work is required. So it's not unusual that not all of the funds accumulated have been spent. It also means that the money goes where it's needed in any particular year to a given centre. Unfortunately, with the 3 centres the council is currently consulting on, the work that is required to address the condition issues can't be undertaken without triggering a whole of building upgrade to bring it to current building standards. And that means we haven't been able to undertake the renewal that is required for parts of the building that have reached the end of their useful asset life. As part of the normal renewal program that is undertaken every year across the council's building portfolio and for other assets. So this is an unusual situation where it's a complex solution that is requiring a clear direction from council to proceed rather than it just being built into the normal renewal program and those funds being expended.
Thanks, Joanne. Chris Carroll, would you like to add to that answer, please?
Through you, Mayor, I think also adding to that is that the levies are held in reserve, so they are not used for any other purpose. They are held in reserve for this purpose. And usually the expenditure on the asset renewal is back-ended, so it's usually you see the expenditure happening at the end of the life of the asset, which is where we're reaching that stage now with these facilities, hence the need for a decision on what to do and the process that we're working through at the moment.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you, Chris, also. I call upon Simon James submitting a question to Council. Simon, if you're online, if you could please state your full name and your suburb, that would be fantastic.
Simon James at St Kilda West.
Welcome, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last council meeting, it is now apparent that 2 of the key factors informing the recommendation the council officers have proposed have been disproven, namely further modelling indicating that in the city of Port Phillip, supply of kindergarten and childcare places will in fact not meet demand, rather than a claimed surplus of supply, and also that centres are eligible for funding rather than an earlier claim that the centres were ineligible based on size. In addition to this, it's clear that to allow the best chance of reaching a mutually beneficial outcome with these centres, the period required for adequate consultation with the committees of management needs to be significantly longer than the City of Port Phillip originally intended. So my question is in 2 parts. Firstly, in light of the significant changes to the basis for the original proposal, along with the uncertainty and the angst the proposal has caused for the community, for these families and these centres, why are council and council officers pursuing this proposal rather than withdrawing the proposal until diligent consideration of changed assumptions has taken place and adequate consultation with the key stakeholders? And the second part of the question is, given council continues to let a drop about their intent to sell, and we note it isn't pitched as a proposal to sell, but rather an intent, will council adequately communicate to the community researching the proposal that assumptions and claims made in that proposal have now been proven incorrect, so as to avoid continuing to spread false information about the sale?
Mr. Tony Kearney, if you could perhaps address the first bit. I think Chris Carroll, if you could address the second component in terms of the process of sale, that would be great. Tony Keenan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. It is correct that we've commissioned further modelling to look at the later years, and there's some difference between the modelling conducted by the state government and the KISP program and the more recent. However, the longer the out years are, the less reliable the data. Both of those shows that there was a small shortage of places towards 2028, 29. So it's not correct to say that one showed there was no surplus, no shortage, and another one showed a shortage. Both showed a shortage. And we're working through the implications of the new modelling. Council is out consulting now on a proposal and consulting widely with the community. Have Your Say is still open. We're having a number of meetings with the committees of management of the centres. So officers have no authority to withdraw a proposal. And given that we're out consulting on the proposal now, that will continue, and we're making sure we're getting feedback from the community and working, as I said, closely with the committees of management. Also, there will be a briefing on the modelling on Friday online, if people want to avail themselves of that, at 1 o'clock. It's on Have Your Say. There's details there about how people can log online to have a look at the modelling.
Thanks very much. And Chris Carroll, if you get your answer the second part, which pertained particularly to the letterbox drop and the process in terms of being able to adequately communicate the proposal and assumptions being made on the proposal in terms of any information that's changed as we've gone through the process also. Thanks, Chris.
Through you, Mayor, the intent to sell process relates to a legislative definition of consultation requirements when we sell property, and it talks about council's intent to sell, which is essentially council beginning a consultation process on proposals to sell. No decision has been made on selling these properties. We are engaging with the community now, consulting with them about that potential outcome, as we are required to do under legislation when we're considering these kind of things. I think the important bit to note is that all of our Have Your Say materials, the council reports that support the decision to go into this process are really clear about that and what this process is doing and what it isn't doing. Through these processes, we always get access to new information, and that was the intent, to go out to community consultation. We're doing further engagement with the centres. We are doing, in response to information requests or further questions we get, we're doing further analysis, including updating our supply and demand analysis. All of those things will go into the overall assessment and information that goes back to councillors to make a decision. So we are continuing to do due diligence, as we have done over the past 5 years with these centres. As part of this process, we will continue to take on board the feedback and respond to new information and ensure the councillors and the community have all of that available when they make their decisions and when their input. The updated supply and demand modelling is available on the Have Your Say site. As we get new information, we are making it publicly accessible as quickly as we can. If you do have a look at the Have Your Say site, you will see there is a mountain of information being provided there. We're being as transparent as we can, and we will go through the process, keep an open mind, and provide councillors with the recommendations based on additional analysis throughout the process.
Thanks for that comprehensive answer. I appreciate that. I call upon Sophie. Actually, I'll go back to... We're good for Kieran, right? So I'll call upon Kieran Wilcox submitting a question to Council. Welcome, Kieran.
Hi, Kieran Wilcox, Elwood.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. My question, Council officers recently provided the detailed breakdown of the capital expenditure and maintenance undertaken at 46 Tennyson Street. For the Councillors' information, in 2008, an expense of $200,034 was spent on what is described in the document as simply a building condition audit. There is no detail provided as to whether this was just an audit or if the money was used for actual works relating to the audit. In subsequent years, the only maintenance or capital works of any significance listed was the replacement of carpet, and at a cost of $27,830 in March 2009. Can Council please provide the full list of recommendations and all the works that were completed as part of the 2008 building condition audit? Thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I'll ask Joanne McNeill to answer that question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I have to take that question on notice. The 2008 audit has obviously occurred quite a long time ago. We will need to have a look at the records and see what we can provide, but we will do that and come back.
Thank you very much. We'll take that on notice and make sure that is reflected in the minutes in terms of the answer. I call upon Sophie Hine submitting a question to Council. Sophie, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Sophie Hine, and I live in Balaclava.
Welcome.
My question also relates to the council's proposal to sell 3 childcare and kinder centres. Council have stated that the expected cost of the North St Kilda childcare and kinder redevelopment is $9.5 million. And in return, this will deliver an additional 44 places. This equates to a cost of well over $200,000 for each additional place created in the North St Kilda Centre. It's actually just under $216,000 for every extra place created. In comparison, spending $1 million on the Avenue childcare and kinder would cost just $25,000 per place if the current number of 40 places is retained in the centre. Given the cost per place for the North St Kilda redevelopment is more than 8 times the cost per place for a renovation of the Avenue, can Council please explain how this is better value for money? Thank you.
Chris Carroll, if you could help us out, please.
Through you, Mayor, I'll start. McNeil might like to respond as well.
Thank you.
I think that comparison isn't comparing like for like. The North St Kilda Childcare Centre redevelopment is not just about expansion of up to 44 places, but it's about renewal of an existing facility, which has around 60 or 70 places off the top of my head as well. So that's actually for an expansion as well as the renewal of the existing places. That site is one that is fit for purpose for the future, that meets development there meets requirements under the Children's Policy Infrastructure for the Future policy direction, and provides a modern, fully fit, future-ready and accessible and safe facility. I'm not sure where the $1 million for the Avenue Childcare Centre refurbishment comes from. And I also note that that doesn't provide any additional places, but would just be for the existing places. So in comparing that to the North St Kilda, it's not a valid comparison. Now, it is a valid comparison to talk about, value for money of these potential centres into the future. But there are some major issues around the sites themselves, the conditions of the building, and what we can actually achieve on those sites. We are doing additional work at the moment around looking at what the costs of upgrading those facilities would be, and what funding and additional funding opportunities that there may be, and Council will continue to consider that and make a value for money decision based on the options when it considers this for final decision making in the coming months.
Any need to go to Joe McNeil? Chris, we good?
Through you, Mayor, just to note that the places at North St Kilda existing is 77 and the expansion would be 44.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's an important thing to note. I call upon Caroline Thornton submitting a question to Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Caroline Thornton from St Kilda.
Welcome.
Thank you. Under the current childcare centre's proposal, 17 Eildon Road is nominated for sale by public auction in just 4 months. This short timeline continues to negatively impact our enrolments and cause ongoing distress and uncertainty amongst our families and our dedicated team of staff. Despite repeated requests to Council for information outlining the imminent serious risks associated with the building continuing to operate as an early childhood centre, we have not been provided with any information that would justify a sale of the property in July 2022. Given the lack of imminent risk and the fact that all viable options to selling the property are yet to be rigorously explored and considered by Council, can Council confirm if Council will consider extending the timeline on the proposed date of sale of 17 Eildon Road, St Kilda? And if so, can Council indicate what that revised date would be?
Thanks for your question, Caroline. Tony Keenan, could you help us out, please?
Through you, Mayor. So Caroline Thornton is right that we're still consulting and the consultation times are going longer. This will obviously mean that Council may need to reconsider the timelines. The only way the timelines from the resolution could be formally changed is through council themselves, but I think it would be likely that officers would recommend, if council asks, that the timeline of sale for Eildon Road couldn't be met, and that we would recommend, if council asks, that be pushed back for a year.
Thank you for the clarification, and thank you, Caroline, for the question. I now call upon Brodie Mitchell, who's speaking to item 13.2, which is the financial update, second quarter 2021-2022 financial review. Brodie, good evening.
Good evening, Brodie Mitchell, Port Melbourne. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Thanks for your time. Yes, I'm speaking in regards to the second quarter financial review, recommendation 3.5. Whilst I understand there is much debate on both sides in our community in relation to public space use, what we do have in common is an urgent need to address the equitable, safe access to public space for everyone. It's evident to me and the hundreds of other people that I speak to in Port Phillip Pooches that our rapidly expanding community of pet owners, more than 15% in the last few years alone, isn't being catered for, and the result of this is both pet owners and non-pet owners becoming increasingly frustrated. If there were safe fenced areas for dogs, we'd use them. If fair and equitable consideration was given to us to use our 11 kilometres of beach, pet owners and non-pet owners would have a better tolerance for sharing this space. As it stands, it's quite clear, looking along our beaches, the inequitable and unfair consideration given to pet owners. At a state level, access and even pet access to public space is being addressed as a priority through the recent Parks Revitalisation Grants and the Open Space for Everyone strategy, which is supposed to be a guide for all levels of government in the planning, management and delivery of a quality open space network for the next 30 years. This strategy is designed to promote the use of public space for everyone in an inclusive way that benefits the health and well-being, economic and social benefits for our community. Ignoring, isolating, segregating or failing to plan for pet owners is hardly following this guidance. To cite a recent example, Alma Park was the only park in our city to benefit from the state government's Park Revitalisation Grant, yet no consideration was made here for fencing or catering to dog owners. The whole purpose of this grant is to increase the equitable utilisation of existing parks. I'd argue making a park safe for an entire segment of the population who can't currently use it would have done just that. And yet we're not considered as part of this opportunity. I urge Council to consider our city can't afford to get the public space utilisation wrong again. It is a scarce resource upon which our health, well-being, social, economic and outcomes heavily rely on. We all need this comprehensive review, but we also need to get it right. When I look at our beaches and listen to those in our parks, I know we have let our community down. We need to engage the community who use these resources and ensure consultation and engagement actually captures these people, not just those sitting at home willing to fill out a survey. Community consultation
just get you to come to the end if you could, Brodie.
Yep, and meet our people where they're at. I look forward to Councillors' support for this recommendation and for our Council to carry out this review. Thank you.
Thanks for your contribution and your comments. I now call upon Simon Rashley submitting a question to Council. Simon, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, and please go ahead for your 3 minutes.
Simon Rashley, St Kilda. I'm here on behalf of the Eildon Road Childcare and Kindergarten. Councillors, as well as council officers, will be aware we've been a bit disappointed with some of the communications over the last couple of months, and we certainly made that clear. Look, we feel what's happened a couple of days ago is probably a new low. I refer to a document that was uploaded to the Have Your Say page against the building. It was the document is City of Port Phillip, 17 Eildon Street, Property Risk Assessment by Henry Group and City of Port Phillip, 31st of January 2022. How is it possible that reports identifying risk to our children has been uploaded as a supporting document for a property sale and has not been shared directly to our centre? The substantive matters like inadequate storage or loose roof tiles seem relatively simple to fix. How can council let such a human safety issue go unattended? Why aren't our centre and council in urgent discussions about how to rectify this fire risk? Why aren't the recommendations of this report being actioned today? I do invite councillors to read that report. It does one would read that, and it does come across that it's looking to embarrass the tenant in this situation, because most of the issues can be, or some of the issues certainly can be addressed quite quickly by Eildon Road Children's Centre. But there's no cooperation from council, and there seems to be absolutely no. So it would appear that you're trying to embarrass us and upload a document that has very little to do with the sale of the property, because there are no major building issues being really brought up. We're talking about adding some storage and things like this, which gives the impression that having determined to sell the building, it seems council has essentially decided to abandon its responsibility as landlord and no longer attend to the most basic and urgent maintenance matters. My question to council is am I unreasonable to come to such a conclusion?
Thanks, Simon. I asked Joanne McNeil to help us with the answer to that question.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thank you for the question. We undertake risk assessments and building assessments routinely across our portfolio, and in the normal scheme of things, we would share that information not through a consultation, but directly with the tenant if it was relevant, and in this case, of course, it would be. However, we're in the midst of a consultation and we've been requested to make all information publicly available, and we're endeavouring to do that. And so that is why that information has also been made publicly available to everybody, including the specific centre. That's not, of course, what we would normally do. Everything that is identified in that report will be addressed. Some things can't be addressed, however, for that building, and that is why we're in this process of consulting on the future of the building. So anything that can be addressed will be. However, there's larger issues at play with that building, and we know that works to address condition and other compliance issues trigger a full upgrade of the building, which is why a clear decision about the future of this building is required. But I would just like to reiterate that any action that can be taken to address the issues that have been identified in this most recent assessment will be undertaken, and further engagement with the centre on those actions will be undertaken.
Thanks very much. Can I just drill down on one part of the question, though, just so we're clear? And Joanne and Chris, if you can help me out with this. Did we provided the report to the centre directly? That's correct? Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure that was sent directly. It was uploaded to Have You Say. Normally, we would send it to the centre if it was, if it was relevant to them, and in this case, it would be. But given that we're going through consultation, I think it might have just got uploaded with all of the other information as well. Okay, and just to answer the point there, obviously there's, under no circumstances would councillors endorse anything that would lead to embarrass any community group, let alone a childcare centre, etc. So I just want to address that point expressly if possible. Councillors, we are in public question time, and we have two questions from Michael Sabata. We get the officer to read those out for us.
Through you, Mayor. The first question relates to public consultation, and it reads, last week I participated in a consultation on the draft nature strip guidelines, which had been proposed to be an outdoor on-site consultation, but was switched to a Teams meeting with public only able to submit anonymously questions which were screened by officers. This near one-way form of information flow is an inferior form of consultation, but was justified due to the Omicron variant COVID-19 outbreak. Considering Council actively encourages the public to meet, especially outdoors, drinking, dining or at St Kilda Festival, how does Council justify this standard? When or under what conditions, based on Victorian CHO advice, will Council engage in face-to-face public consultations? If no date is to be set by Council for face-to-face public consultation, why does Council not use the feature of Teams or other meeting software to enable greater public participation in its consultations?
Great, thank you. I'll call upon Claire Stevens to help us with the answer to this question.
Thanks, through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question. The online format was not Council's preferred way to consult with the community, and originally an in-person format was prepared for that consultation. However, due to the impacts of COVID and the ongoing risk to health and safety to staff and the community, the sessions were moved online. Council has a duty of care and legislated responsibilities to ensure its staff are safe within a work context, and the impacts of COVID have meant that the decision was made not to progress with the in-person consultation. The engagement team is working with our IT team to explore how they can make the consultation more interactive, and that includes moving from the Teams events functionality, which is designed for sort of communicating from one to many, and with the host leading the event and leading the interactions and audience participation, and to change from that Teams events to the regular Teams application, which will enable greater external interaction. The City of Port Phillip follows the Chief Health Officer's advice and also other government advice, along with undertaking our own risk assessments to ensure our programs can be delivered safely. The government recommendation at this time is that people continue to work from home where they can. And so whilst it's really wonderful that we've got greatly eased restrictions in the community, virtual consultation enables those officers and others to work from home where possible.
Thank you very much. We got another question from Michael Sabata.
Through you, Mayor. This question relates to My Port Phillip. Is Council aware of resident dissatisfaction with the experience of using the My Port Phillip web-based system? I suggest councillors apply for a parking permit to consider if this is a usable system for everyone in Port Phillip, especially those over 60 whose first language is other than English or might have other access issues, including not owning a computer. Parking permit applications through My Port Phillip have proven difficult to use, necessitating a visit in person to assist. What plans are in place to improve access to assist, as there is now no council office in South Melbourne, and in Port Melbourne it is only 2 days a week?
Thanks very much. Call upon Tanya McKenzie, please. Tanya McKenzie, rather.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My Port Phillip is only one aspect of a broader customer experience improvement program. And My Port Phillip has expanded our online services, making it easier for the community to lodge a broad range of service requests, feedback and complaints, as well as expanding the availability of online service for more complex applications, many of which were previously only paper-based. We have received both positive feedback and feedback identifying specific difficulties being experienced using some parts of the system. We acknowledge and are aware of the difficulties that some of our community members have experienced completing parking permits on My Port Phillip. Since August, over 12,000 parking permits have been completed, with about 50% of those being successfully completed by the community members online and 50% processed at our service centres or with support from staff over the phone. We're currently planning a briefing with councillors to test several potential policy and process change ideas to improve the customer's experience associated with parking permits. We're working through these as quickly as we can and need to make sure that the system can accommodate the changes, that the changes don't have unintended consequences, and also discuss these changes with Council's internal auditors, given potential change to some controls. More broadly, we are also exploring the use of Google Translate across our websites to support those whose first language is other than English, and translation services are always available through our telephone and our counter service. And finally, South Melbourne Town Hall is closed due to construction, and we are looking at opportunities for counter service in the area. Our counter services at Port Melbourne Town Hall are currently operating at 3 days a week with expanded hours of 9 to 4, and we will continue to monitor and respond to the demand. I would just also like to say that if members of the community are experiencing difficulty with My Port Phillip or other online services, officers would encourage them to reach out either by telephone or attend one of our counter service outlets, and staff will be more than pleased to support members of the community in their interactions with us. Thank you.
No, thank you. And councillors are very much looking forward to that briefing in terms of any improvements we can make to the system and the processes included within. Adrian Jackson has a question.
Through you, Mayor, the question reads, why is Council promoting the use of e-scooters at ratepayers' expense? E-scooters are heavier and can travel faster on footpaths and are dangerous to normal footpath users. They can clutter footpaths at the shops too. These e-vehicles should use the road, not the footpath, so why doesn't Council fix this with the state government and local laws? A photo posted to the Council website on 8 February shows the Port Melbourne bike corridor next to a road appears to have used up the grass nature strip. Why is Council removing grass to replace it with hard standing, which is environmentally unhelpful?
Kind of two questions there, right? We'll take the first one. I'm presuming Brian T will take the first one, and then the development of the bike corridor will go to it goes to Brian as well. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Council's Move Connect Live integrated transport strategy recognises that a well-regulated shared transport service, including e-scooters, may offer an alternative, sustainable and affordable transport option. During the last few years, we have seen an increase in the use of privately owned e-scooters in Melbourne, and there have been concerns about many of them not complying with road safety rules and not being safe. Council is involved in the e-scooter trial to ensure the e-scooter trial is well regulated and is safe for e-scooter users and others. The trial prohibits riding on footpaths and limits the speed of e-scooters to 20 kilometres per hour. E-scooters can be ridden on shared paths, bike paths and roads where there is a speed limit of 50 kilometres or less. Victoria Police is responsible for enforcing the road rules that apply to the trial, but council officers are working closely with the state government to monitor parking and amenity issues, including the location and the numbers of e-scooters deployed. More information can be found on the council's webpage at e-scootertrial-City of Port Phillip. Specifically, Mr Jackson asks about the expense to ratepayers. Council has passed a resolution that requires that any agreement entered into as part of the trial includes the cost of council's administration, compliance and evaluation activities need to all be covered as part of that agreement. Mr Jackson also asks about the use of the nature strip to locate the Port Melbourne bike corridor, and sections of that nature strip on Beacon Road have been removed to provide for the new two-way bike path. Council, in doing so, had to consider the best use of that open space, including the merits of providing the bike path, which has the advantage of encouraging people to walk and ride. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. A question has been received from Leonie Miller.
Through you, Mayor, the question reads, renovations of old buildings occur on a daily basis in Port Phillip. Buildings that would be at the end of their life are revived by such renovations. Given this, why have Council not commissioned draft plans for renovating the existing building within which the Avenue Childcare operates in order to make it compliant with access legislation and had the renovation costs assessed by a quantity surveyor?
Thank you very much. I'll ask Joanne McNeill to help us with the answer to that question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Council has been working on options to restore the 3 centres that are currently being consulted on since 2016, when the extent of the issues associated with undertaking works to the buildings was identified and were communicated to the centres at that time. Since then, Council has commissioned a number of pieces of work, including design plans, to work through what can be done to address those condition and compliance issues, and information has been made available on the Have You Say page around that. What the work has identified, though, is that there is a significant cost associated with addressing the condition, accessibility and compliance issues that won't actually address functionality or all of the accessibility issues for the sites and won't result in any more places being made available. And this is why a clear direction on the future of those buildings is required, given that it's not just a straightforward renewal of the asset which would normally be undertaken.
Thanks very much. We've received a question from Laura Hill and Andrew Hoare.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Council has publicly provided information on indicative costings based on a 2016 scheme that involves significant redevelopment of the avenue. Why hasn't Council provided plans and indicative costings at a base level upgrade of the avenue to meet DDA requirements? Why is Council pursuing more expensive options in the first instance?
Thank you, Joanne McNeill.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question. Council has looked at the minimum required to address condition and compliance issues, including accessibility, and we know that the scale of work required will trigger full compliance with the current building code and will have to include other works that need to be done to bring it up to current standard. That means then that it's not just the work that we know needs to be done, but other work as well, and that is what we have explored. We certainly aren't looking at doing additional work that's not required or triggered by building code or other permits.
Thank you very much. Adrian Jackson's asked a question in relation to item 14.1, which is Councillor Bond's notice of motion regarding adventure playgrounds.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This is a comment on the report only.
Fair enough. There's a question mark at the end though, so I thought it was a question.
Why have councils generally removed over recent decades sturdy steel playground equipment and replaced it with plastic equipment? Will council support the use of good and safe but exciting playground equipment like reinstating the trampolines Councillor Bond has mooted tonight, but also support initiatives by residents and ratepayers to install safe improvised equipment on wider nature strips in front of their homes?
Thank you. Take that as a comment. All right, councillors, that concludes item number 4, which is public question time and submissions. It's now item 5, which is your opportunity to ask councillor question times. Councillors, do you have any questions that you'd like to raise? Councillor Clark.
Through you, Mayor. My question follows on a little bit from one of the residents' questions around the e-scooters. Given we advocated so strongly for e-scooters and for the trial, I should say, my observations in the last couple of weeks have been at least 1 in 3 people not wearing a helmet. I've seen multiple people riding two on a bike, one with a helmet, one without, sometimes an adult and a child. I've seen people going pretty fast down the footpaths, and we've seen some very public altercations on St Kilda Road and various other incidents that are all quite unpleasant. So do we have any responsibility or any work that we're doing with the police, or is it solely the police's responsibility to police the safety requirements? Then I guess my question is that would be quite a lot of an increase on police resources to be reviewing all of the breaches that I've seen just in the last couple of weeks.
CEO, could you help us out in the first instance? I know it's Mr. Brian T's...
Through you, Mayor, if Brian T's not available, I can certainly answer some of those, being a party to the agreement. So if we're talking about the trial scooters as opposed to privately owned scooters, I know under the agreement that there is a complaints hotline, so it's not just reporting it to the police. The operators have to operate a complaints line, and I believe they have capacity, and because these are GPS tracked and logged, they know the users, so when they get those complaints, they can follow it up with the users. But Brian T previously alluded to the fact that these are monitored by the police. I'm unable to comment on police resources, but certainly a number of the incidents that have been reported have been related to private scooters. So we are continuing to evaluate. There is regular contact between the three councils and the operators who are undertaking these trials, and certainly we can certainly forward any complaints from members of the public to the operators. So a little bit different to the O-bikes. I think we've got much more of a personal contact with the operator to respond to complaints, and because they know where the scooter is and who's operating it, they can take action.
Could I also suggest we take on notice the component about liability or obligation that council has also? It is covered off in the reports, obviously, but it would be, I think it's important we take that component of your question, Councillor Clark, on notice. Follow up? Go for it.
Oh, I have a second question.
Go for it.
And my second question relates to, I've received a fair bit of feedback around the barefoot cinema in the Botanical Gardens. Can a council officer advise what consultation was done with the residents regarding that, and whether they were made aware that we were going to be putting a cinema in the Botanical Gardens?
I'll ask Kylie Bennett to have a go at that in the first instance. If Kylie, could you help us out?
Yep, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question. We'll need to take that question on notice.
No problem. Brian T's just rejoined us. There was a second component to the question that Councillor Clark asked before, which you may wish to take on notice, which we already have, around any liability or safety considerations that council needs to take on board regarding the e-scooter trial, particularly misuse of the scooters by people hiring them, use of footpaths, multiple people riding on them, and people not using helmets.
I will, through you, Mayor, take that on notice. We have received legal advice, but I'll provide a comprehensive response.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for coming back. We very much appreciate that. Sorry. Go again, Councillor Clark. Go ahead.
Sorry, and my final question. I received my rates notice on a couple of days ago, I think, and that gives me 2 weeks' notice in which to pay the last instalment. Can a council officer advise what is the normal notice period you'd expect to get a rates notice to then confirm when you have to make the payment? 2 weeks seemed kind of a short notice period, but that may be my memory failing me. So I just wanted to clarify that, please.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, I'd need to check what our normal timeline is for rates instalment notices. We do provide, obviously, the rates notice at the start of the year, and we do provide progressive reminders for those on instalments or those who haven't paid. 14 days is the legislative minimum, but I'd suggest that we would normally look to provide a longer time period of those reminders. We are looking at some improvements as well as part of the customer experience program. We've now enabled the capability to provide things like text reminders to people as well, which we'll be looking to enable as part of next year's rating process. But I will come back on that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you for that, Councillor Clark. You're done? Thank you very much. I'll ask a quick question. I've got a few tonight, and then other councillors do also. Can officers please provide councillors with an update on what council is doing to monitor and measure traffic movements in and around Cowdery Street? In particular, are there any initiatives being considered to improve safety and traffic flow in this area, especially at peak times, noting the previous petitions considered by council on this matter in recent years?
Through you, Mayor.
Thank you, Kylie Bennett.
Brian T will be back very shortly to answer that question.
Should we be awkward and wait for him? No. No worries. Who would like to go next? Councillor Crawford, Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to do a follow-up on Councillor Clark's question regarding e-scooters and the CEO's response about a hotline. Is it possible for Council to put up on the website the details of reporting their either positive or negative reactions to e-scooters and what that hotline is, or any phone numbers that they can contact the contracting companies?
Through you, Mayor, I'll take that part of it on notice because I'll just need to check the agreement. And I'm just, I believe that, I should clarify, I believe there's a 24 contact number. I did that off the top of my head because from my memory of the agreement, but I'll take the rest of it on notice. I think there is a contact number from my memory of the agreement. Whether we can publish it and how we promote it, I'll just need to consult the agreement. So I'll take that part on notice.
I guess my reasoning...
Councillor Sirikoff.
Sorry.
No, follow up.
Yes, please. I guess my reasoning for it is that if there's e-scooters that are not behaving appropriately, it's too difficult to really get any details like you'd have on a car registration of a vehicle. So I guess a hotline, whether it be, well, how you could report this, I guess. But I hope this can result in a good outcome so that people do behave.
As Chair, I'll seek to provide some clarification. Obviously, there is a police element to this. The police have issued a number of enforcement fines in the first week. The advantage of these operations is all you need is a time and a location, and the provider has the ability to locate the scooter. So thank you, CEO, for taking that on notice. And we shall move on. Who's got... Councillor Bond, go ahead.
Just some follow-up information for Councillor Sirikoff. Every scooter has a little code on the front of it.
Question, Councillor Bond. We're in question.
Scooters. I'm asking a question on behalf of a constituent who is not able to be here tonight. She would normally attend, but because we don't have members of the public here, she's unable to attend and she doesn't have internet at home, so can't ask a question virtually. She was recently travelling to a medical appointment and went through St Kilda Junction and thought all the new artwork under the tunnels there were fantastic and was really impressed by them, but has asked me to follow up on another mural at her local tram stop at South Melbourne near the South Melbourne Market, which she said is looking old and dated and covered in graffiti, and she was wondering if we could find out, one, who was responsible for that particular mural at the South Melbourne Market tram stop, and two, if it's us that is responsible, can it be put on the program of works for the mural to be repainted, updated, and cleaned, if that is possible at all?
Just before we get the answer on that, I'll just note an interest I have through association of that wall, albeit it's not a direct financial interest, but I'll just note that. I won't remove myself, but just note that. No, it's not my house. I have no direct financial interest in it, but I have, no direct financial interest in it, but something through close association. Chris Carroll, would you like to take that on notice, or go ahead, Chris Carroll?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for the feedback, and thank you to the constituent for the feedback. Really pleased and proud of the work that we've been doing around the St Kilda Junction, not only the mural but a range of other works as well, and there's more to come to improve safety around that space. I will have to take on, I'm not familiar with the piece of work, I will have to take it on notice, but we do have a graffiti management plan, and there's various parts of council working closely to look at our murals and to continue to invest and also look after the ones that we currently have. I'm just not sure about this one.
Particularly that last bit, obviously, would be good to know more about in terms of the maintenance thereafter. Once they're put in place, obviously, would be good to get some more information on. Brian T, welcome back. Would you like me to repeat the question just on the traffic flows in Cowdrey Street? We know they were provided to you beforehand. Yeah, go for it. I will. Can officers, just on the mask, it's their choice, Councillor Crawford, if they wish to take their mask off. Can officers please provide councillors with an update on what council is doing to monitor and measure traffic movements in and around Cowdrey Street? In particular, are there any initiatives being considered to improve safety and traffic flow in this area, especially at peak times, noting the previous petitions considered by council on this matter in recent years?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The traffic at Cowdrey Street is an ongoing issue that we've been aware of for some time. We have considered options including changes to signalisation, which would effectively ban the right turn. The difficulty is that there are access issues then, particularly for the local schools. So we'll continue to work with particularly Vic Roads to explore an option, and we're happy to come back to you with the outcome of those discussions, which are not new, but resulting from this, we might revisit that issue, Mayor.
Thank you, Brian T. If that could be perhaps noted in the CEO report, obviously we're not asking you to produce a full service report to council unless you think that's required. A couple more questions from me. Can officers please provide an update on to councillors on developments to remove community gardens in Port Melbourne based on safety concerns, specifically at the Fisherman's Bend Community Centre? What arrangements are being made to support the gardeners, and can you provide further background? Thank you, Tony Keenan.
Through you, Mayor, no decision of council was made. That was a decision of the Committee of Management who run the gardens. They felt that it was too difficult to run the two sites. I understand they're working through with gardeners as spaces become available at their other site. But that wasn't a council decision. That was a decision of the Committee of Management.
Were there any concerns raised by council regarding contaminated soil or other contaminated items in the gardens?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to take that on notice, but I haven't been made aware of that.
So just to reiterate, council has made no decision or direction about removing of those gardens?
No.
Thank you for the clarification. One final question from me. Can officers please provide an update on the maintenance and condition of the Port Melbourne Baseball Club pitch and plans to rectify the surface or any maintenance of the surface, and then whether or not there's plans in place to manage that surface in the short and long term?
Dana Pritchard is online.
David Pritchard, welcome to the meeting, David. Dana, sorry.
Through you, Mr Mayor. We have appointed a turf consultant who's been out on site at the baseball pitches. His report has noticed that there's some damage to the field, particularly around the bases, but he's not recommended that the grounds be shut down. So working with him, his recommendation is that short term we continue with the maintenance program that we've got in place, which is Citywide goes out and addresses any concerns on the field on Fridays, and then the club continues to check the field before play to make sure there's no large rocks on the field. The next step is to investigate some works to reconstruct the surfaces around the bases, which could happen in the short term. So we're currently working on what that looks like. And longer term, we're looking at options to rebuild the field, including consideration of synthetic surfaces and other surfaces. These longer term works are currently proposed in the budgets over the next couple of financial years, and will come through councillors through that process.
Thank you, Dana. Who would like to go next, councillors? Councillor Crawford, did you have a question? No? Any further questions? Great job. Let's move now from item 5 to item 6, which is the ceiling schedule. We have no items to skill tonight, so let's go to item 7, which is petition and joint letters. Councillors, we have no petitions on tonight's agenda, so let's move to item 13 rather, which is obviously the presentation of reports. First report on the agenda this evening is the CEO report, which is item 8.1. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
I was going to ask some specific questions around the consultation process on the childcare centres. I guess a lot of the community have just asked and those questions have been answered. Could I just clarify one or two? So obviously, there was a whole lot of flyers that have gone out, which was part of our commitment to go more broadly in the consultation for that proposal. But that's not a sign that we aren't considering other options. That was just part of the process that we agreed to in December. Could I clarify that, please?
There's obviously a reference in the CEO report to the consultation process, so this is perfectly fine. So, Chris Carroll, over to you.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, that's correct. It's part of the meeting our legislative obligations around when you consider these kind of matters, and it is not the only form of consultation and engagement we're doing, and we're certainly open to all feedback and assessing that feedback alongside further advice to council on those options.
Go ahead, Councillor Crawford.
Yes, sorry, may I follow up? You mentioned that you have had some meetings with the VSBA or state government. Are there do we have a timeline? Are you meeting them? Is there a future meetings planned to kind of take the next steps or find more information out?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we met last Friday and we've got our next meeting scheduled 2 weeks from last Friday. So, Friday week.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in relation to the Children's Centre's consultation as well. Now, I've had a member of the public approach me that they had heard that council officers have been meeting with potential buyers of the 3 childcare centres. Doesn't sound right, but has this happened?
Through you, Mayor. This is a broad-based engagement process that we're undertaking at the moment, and a range of people have been participating in that process and contacting council and giving feedback, including those who are deeply opposed to the proposal, those who are supportive of it, those who've got questions about it, and those who have indicated some interest that if there was a sale process in the future that they would like to participate in it. That's a natural outcome of, I think, this kind of process, but we are not in any, detailed discussions or negotiations. We're really clear that this is a process that still needs to be run and council needs to make a decision. There is no sales process right now. This is an engagement on a potential sales process in the future.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Baxter. Just before you do, Deputy Mayor Baxter, I'll get the CEO to comment.
Through you, Mayor, I just wanted to clarify that we would not be in any negotiations for sale, detailed or otherwise, because of where we are in the process. Is that correct, Mr. Carroll? We are not having any discussions or negotiations, but some people who are potentially interested may have contacted us, but where we are in the sales process, we would not be having any discussion around sale until council's made that decision. Is that correct?
As I said before, through you, Mayor, at the moment, we're just having people who are expressing interest in a range of different ways, including some have expressed interest in potentially buying if a sales process was to go ahead, but we are not in any negotiation. We are not in a sale process right now, and we're only fielding those inquiries that we have, as we have also from people who are against the sale completely, potential sale, and also those who are supportive of it.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for that, Mr. Carroll. I don't want to labour the point, but I do think it's really important to make this clear that potential buyers can contact us as part of the consultation. They can show interest. They can make all sorts of things, but we haven't sat down with them to have discussions about sales. That's not happened.
Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, certainly I have not been involved in any of those kind of discussions. I'll check with my team, but We are not in a process of selling these centres. We're in a process of we're in a process of consultation around a potential sale and future other options now, as directed by Council through its decision when it considered this matter. We are not in a sales process. We are not negotiating sales of these centres.
Thanks, Chris Carroll. Any further questions on the CEO report? Councillor Councillor.
Thank you. This is also a little bit around the childcare centres. As touched on during the public question time, there's a little bit of acknowledgement that the timeline has been pushed and stretched because of the extension to the consultation. So I just want to clarify, are you waiting on direction from the councillors to extend the timeline?
Tony Keenan?
Sorry, for Eildon Road probably is, I'm saying.
Extend the timeline specifically for Eildon Road.
Yeah, there's a council resolution which was passed, which we're now enacting. So it would, to extend the timeline, that would have to be a decision of council. If officers were asked, our advice would be, given that the consultation's been extended, in the case of Eildon Road, where the sale was flagged to commence in June, with settling in the end of the year, council officers' advice would be to extend that for 12 months, but that would ultimately need to be a decision of council because of the previous resolution the council has passed.
Great, thank you for that. Just waiting to see if there's any further questions on the CEO report. Okay, councillors, looking for a mover of this motion or an alternative. Councillor Martin wishes to move the officer's recommendation or something different.
I'm prepared to move the officer's recommendation, but I believe there's an amendment that may be put after I've moved this motion.
No problem. Just we can do it that way. Or obviously, someone can move it as one. Councillor Baxter has seconded the officer's recommendation. Councillor Martin, please feel free to speak to the item, which is the CEO report.
CEO report, I've said on many occasions, is the favourite document that I see every month before the council. I know that we see this document a few weeks after it's written, so it's not entirely up to date, but it's a great way to see some of the initiatives the council has done. I'll note a couple of things there. I could talk for hours, but I know Councillor Crawford's very keen to move an amendment. So great to see that the Wellington Street Common Ground project's underway. Fantastic that the planning permit's been issued. And Mr Keenan, I note that our council's had a major input into the Common Ground Housing Model Practice Manual, which is a fantastic document which I commend to councillors and the public to read so they get a real understanding of what's happening in the Wellington Street Common Ground. I see that Waddy Watson's nearly completed. I see the Point Ormond Playground's just about ready to open. That all sorts of wonderful things are happening at the South Melbourne Town Hall as the upgrade there proceeds. But the last thing I notice is that there's an update on the proposal to investigate the possible sale of 3 childcare centres, and I note that was written by the CEO some time ago. I believe, Councillor Crawford, that you're looking to move an amendment which may clarify that in a little bit more detail.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I certainly think this is a great document. If anybody wants to get a good idea about what Council is up to, read this document and you will get a very good idea. One of the things that I wanted to point out is under the Don't Waste It Waste Management strategy, there are some communal food organics locations, new ones that will be coming online shortly, which were supposed to come online a little while ago but have been delayed due to COVID, staff shortages and other COVID issues that we're all dealing with. But they will be coming on very, very soon. I know that one is in Hewison Reserve in Balaclava, another one is in Clark Street Reserve in Elwood, and where's the third one? It's in Port Melbourne. Yeah, okay, that's why I don't remember. I get so parochial with my ward. Sorry, Councillor Councillor. But this is a great thing. I've been getting really great feedback from people about the communal food organics trial that we're doing, and it's really great that we'll be able to provide a few more locations for that.
Great, Councillor Crawford.
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Go ahead, if you could propose your amendment.
So it's In addition to 3.1, it would be 3.2 that notes the update within the CEO report on page 5 on consultation occurring within the community on the proposed sale of the 3 childcare centres and discussions being held with the state and federal governments to consider any viable options to sale. 3.3 notes the verbal advice from officers that the consultation has been extended and that more time is required to conclude discussions with the state government and consider alternative viable options to sale. 3.4 requests the CEO to bring a report to the March 2nd Council meeting with advice on the following. 3.4.1, the need to extend the proposed time frame for the proposed sale process to allow time for the extended consultation and exploration of alternative viable options to sale, including advice on the benefits and risks of extending the time frame of the proposed sale process. And 3.4.2, discussions held to date within the state government and federal government and the likely timeframe for conclusion of these discussions and the forward timeframe for council consideration of future options.
Great. And Councillor Councillor has indicated she's very welcome to second your amendment. So, Councillor Crawford, go ahead and speak to your amendment.
Look, it's all, I guess, the kind of formal wording, but basically what this amendment is intended to do, should it pass, is to give a little more clarity and the level of certainty that we can at this point. We're really aware how stressful and exhausting this process is, but we also wanted to reassure you that although they're seeming like there are 2 processes running side by side, the statutory one with the intent to sale proposal, but there also is that extensive consultation which we are doing with our wider community, but particularly with the centres, and they're running simultaneously. That doesn't mean that one sort of knocks the other one out of the equation, so there is no decision. And actually this extension and this more deeper dive with our community and all stakeholders means that we're going to have at the decision point not just the option to sell, but hopefully lots of different viable options to consider, and we'll have a lot more well, obviously we've heard a lot more and gained a lot more knowledge and understanding of those intangibles that perhaps, or I didn't recognise as well as I could initially. So this is about reassuring you that next on the 2nd of March we'll bring back a clear kind of revised timeline and what that might mean, particularly for Eildon Road. So I'm urging my fellow councillors to support this so that we do have the option to then look at redefining that timeline, given that we have a whole lot more information and options coming our way and a whole lot more discussions being had at all levels of government.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Councillor.
Thank you for bringing this amendment, Councillor Crawford, and thank you for the General CEO report. It's very good and always very informative. I agree that we need to clarify and be consistent in our language around this sensitive topic, so viable options of sale, and that it's been acknowledged that more time is going to be required. So we need to make the formal request, as it sounds like that we're trying to do here, for to give that certainty to the centres, families and community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, I'm very happy to support the amendment here this evening, councillors, and I congratulate and thank Councillor Crawford and Councillor Councillor for bringing it. I know you're all treating this matter very, very seriously, but as Councillor Crawford said, and to reiterate that, this amendment will provide some degree of certainty, as the officers have recommended, in terms of the process and an outlook on the process, which is critically important, as we heard through the question time from members representing the centres this evening. So thank you to Councillor Crawford and Councillor Councillor for looking into this in detail and bringing this amendment. Anybody else wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, Councillor Crawford, you're right to close if you wish. On the amendment you are now. Yeah, they changed it.
No, I'm going to take that off. I just want to reassure centres we're listening, and this amendment is to try and give you clarity on a timeline for that decision and make things and kind of put in paper the things that are happening and where we go to next. But just to reassure you that there is no decision being made. We really value the input, and we know it's a difficult time, and officers are working really hard to provide all the information. But this is a small amendment to try and reassure you in this difficult time.
Thanks, councillors. Put that amendment to you. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now go back to the substantive motion, of which we've heard from Councillor Martin and Councillor Deputy Mayor Baxter. Would anyone else like to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to add a item that was reported in the CEO's report, and I'm pleased to read about, and that is regarding last year we received many emails regarding hoon driving, and we implemented a system where we brought in a mobile CCTV for the police to use, and it's fantastic to read that the CCTV has discouraged hoon driving with a noticeable decline in calls from the community. So I'm glad that this has been a successful outcome so far.
Thanks for noting that, Councillor Sirikoff. Anyone else wish to speak to this substantive motion? Thank you. I'll now ask Councillor Martin to close if you wish.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you to Councillors Crawford and Consolo for making what I love moving this motion. It's a wonderful motion when we celebrate all the wonderful things that have happened, but I think their motion has clarified a very, very important point from the CEO's report, and it's given a lot more clarity to the members of our childcare communities. And having had 48 years in the education sector, 30 years in educational leadership and 10 years on the boards of childcare centres, I know how difficult it is to go through the enrolment processes and to give clarity to families about how long their children are likely to be in a particular centre. And I've been involved in school amalgamations, childcare closures, all sorts of things, and they're very, very traumatic for families. And I'm hoping that with this process we can give lots and lots of clarity. My personal experience is that parents really like to have probably close to 2 years of certainty about whether something's happening. I know if I was involved in the school situation, we'd be looking at giving parents at least 2 years' notice if we were looking at doing anything that involved an amalgamation, a multi-campus or even a campus closure. And I'm hoping that our officers will come back with a recommendation that gives people, particularly those in Eildon Road, some clarity as to what's happening, and parents can enrol with certainty, knowing where their children will be at in 2022 and 2023.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. And I'll put that motion to you, councillors. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to item 13.1, which is the provision of banking services contract. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to the item? There being none, I'm happy to move. Councillor Crawford wishes to second. Thank you for going through the detail of this very important contract. Very happy to support the process you've gone through, and also thank the Commonwealth Bank for their recent refurbishment of the Port Melbourne branch. When many people are moving out, it's nice to see that the banker we're supporting in some respects is supporting us also. Hopefully they don't pull any more branches out the next year to contradict what I've just said. But thank you for going through the process. But we're very impressed with what the submissions have been made through, and the probity process that's been followed to ensure that council gets the best possible deal we possibly can. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the motion? I don't wish to close. Does anyone else wish to speak? Put that motion to you, councillors. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. We now move to item 13.2, which is the finance update, second quarter of 2021-22, the financial review, and under when we get to the motion under section 32, we'll be considering this motion in part. This report. Okay, there being none, I'm looking for a mover for part 1, which is detailed in the agenda and detailed on the screen in front of you here today. Thanks, Councillor Crawford, to move, and Deputy Mayor Baxter to second part 1 of the officer's recommendation. Councillor Crawford, do you wish to speak to the item? No. Deputy Mayor Baxter, please, if you wish to speak, go ahead.
Sure. Just for anybody watching, just to give some indication as to what we're doing here. Basically, every quarter we have ups and downs in our financial situations. We identify opportunities, gaps, and so on. So this is, we've had some discussion around this, and these are some things that I think were relatively uncontroversial, so we've put them in part one to separate them from some other things that we can go by, sort of proposal by proposal, if that's right, Mayor.
That is. Anybody else wish to speak to part one? Councillor Crawford, would you like to close? No, I put part one of the motion to your vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I now look for a mover of part two of the officer's recommendation or something else. Thank you, Councillor Martin, to move and Councillor Consolo to second. Councillor Martin, please feel free to speak to the item.
When I joined this council, I was told that council was all about rubbish, parking and rates, and I've discovered as a Gateway Ward council that dogs provide just as much email, text message and phone traffic as those three issues. I'm also told that the issue of dog management has been before the council many times, that something that understands what no doubt is they don't get a while out probably don't take a while out of discussing it, to death of discussing it. However, as a new councillor, I'm not saying that council spent many hours and perhaps time and money on this in previous years. We don't seem to have got it right. The number of dogs in our municipalities increased significantly, and the angst that exists in the Gateway Ward, at least in the inevitable clash between those people who want more space for dogs and those people who want less space for dogs, is causing an enormous amount of angst. And while I'm not a great one to urge the spending of a whole lot of money on things that I don't believe are worthwhile, I believe that if we can get this right, and it looks like we can probably, with the funding that's available in the motion that I'm moving here at the moment, there will be enough resources at the council to perhaps get this right once and for all. We can say to the committee, we're going to get it right once and we're not going to change for umpteen years. We're going to get the signage right. We're going to get the dog beaches right. We're going to get the dog-free parks right. We're going to perhaps increase the number of council officers who are involved in animal management to make sure that if people do the wrong thing with their animals, a very small minority of dog owners who don't look after councils.
Can I interrupt you, Ruthie? The web stream's dropped off, so you're just talking to us here, which is fine. But we might see, just because I suspect you want to repeat yourself in a few moments, but yeah. We just so sorry to interrupt, but we might just adjourn for 10 or so. Welcome back. All right, welcome. We're at item 13.2, and we're in part two of the motion. Thank you to Councillor Martin, who's moved the motion, and Councillor Councillor, who's seconded the motion. Councillor Martin, do you wish to speak to the item?
I shall, and some people may have heard the first little bit of what I spoke. Over the last few years, the issue of dogs has been discussed multiple times in this chamber. This is the first time we've had it. It's been a major item since I've been on council, but Councillor Bond tells me it comes up every 2 years, and I think he's sick to death of talking about dogs, and I don't blame him. And I know there are people in this chamber who say, well, look, we've done this so many times, do we really need to spend more money? Well, as a Gateway Ward councillor, I can tell you that it's not just rubbish and parking and rates that are the three issues there. Dogs are also a huge issue there. With all due respect to previous councils, they may well have got things right at the time, but with the massive increase in the dog population in Port Phillip since the start of COVID, things are almost out of control in many of our dog areas, particularly around our beaches, but also in the various on-leash and off-leash areas in our parks. And I think we need to get it right once and for all. So although there's sums of money proposed in this motion over the next 2 financial years, I think that if we can get our dog situation correct now, we're going to make life so much easier for ward councillors and council officers as we manage our dog situation with far more clearly marked and demarcated dog-free, on-leash and off-leash dog areas. I'd like to see, perhaps as a result of this proposal, the investigation of having more council officers who are there in animal management. And I'm guessing that even though it's only a very small number of our dog owners who aren't responsible, those small dog owners could generate an enormous amount of revenue for the council if we had council officers who could, and most of them I think probably come from outside the city of Port Phillip, but there is an awful lot of money that could be raised by assisting people and educating them to be better dog owners and responsible dog owners by finding them where their dogs are behaving inappropriately. So if we get this right, Councillor Bond, this may be the last time you ever need to sit in the chamber and discuss this, even if you spend another 4 terms on council, and I understand the frustration that many of you have, but it ain't working. If we can get it right once, it's going to save an enormous amount of angst. It's going to mean that those people who are genuinely scared of dogs will have places where they can go and know that they're safe. It'll mean our many dog owners won't feel that council isn't necessarily supporting them. Our income from our dog registration fees is going up exponentially every year, so we're getting more funding in. So in some ways we can use the increase in our animal registration fees to help fund the proposals that are put forward in this budget, in this motion. And of course, if we had a couple more animal management officers, we could probably support not just their salaries but pay off the rest of the income that's suggested in this motion by the fines that they would be able to bring in to looking after the illegal behaviour of those very, very few people in Port Phillip who don't manage their dogs appropriately. So I would love to see council support this. It's going to make my life as a Gateway Ward councillor so much easier. It's going to make many, many of the people, certainly in my ward at least, much more comfortable. As I say, those who are wary of being near dogs will know there are places where they are safe, and those people who are dog lovers, and I'm one of them, they'll have places where they know that they can go where they can take their dogs safely and freely and without fear of upsetting those people who may not be quite as fond of dogs as they are. So I commend this to you.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, there has been very strong community support for review for different reasons, but they come together on this, that it should be done. It's mind-boggling how much a review like this does cost, but it makes sense for the amenity that people are requesting. Yes, it's been done before prior to my time on council, but it's very important to acknowledge that that review was done pre-COVID, all those little COVID puppies, and there's been a massive change in lifestyle, work-life balance, that more people are working from home, whether that's full-time or a few more days a week, and that shifts when they go out and walk their dog or want to walk alone on the beach, depending on, and it changes the seasonal aspect. You're not just seeing people more influx during summer or winter, depending on what they're doing. It's important for us to acknowledge that and to review it based on that. So I'd also like to encourage support for this one so that we can get it right for this current times. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Councillor. Who else would like to speak to part 2 of this item? Councillor Bond, go ahead.
I won't be supporting this because I've done this twice before, and this is how it plays out. We do a review, we get 50 people turn up, and we make these recommended changes. And 50 people turn up and tell us that there's not enough area for dogs, and 50 people turn up and tell us that there's too many areas for dogs. And we basically wind up where we are pretty much right now with a few little tinkering around the edges, but nothing major ever changes, because we try and find this compromise between the two passionate groups who will all walk away thinking we didn't listen to them and didn't give them what it is they wanted, which is exactly what happened with the latest review we did recently. As soon as it was done, we started to get petitions saying, I want this, I want dog-free beaches, I want more dogs on beaches. And that's just the nature of dealing with dogs. We don't need to spend $300,000 or more than $300,000, $310,000 to get to that outcome. If there's problems at the moment with enforcement, we can fix that right now. If there's a problem with signage, we should be fixing that right now. We don't need a $310,000 review to tell us that if we need more local laws that could go down and enforce our dog off-leash and on-leash and dog-free areas. That can all be done right now without spending $310,000. So I won't be supporting this, and when this comes back, it'll be we'll make a few minor little changes, a couple of times, an hour here, an hour there. Maybe a little park or a little steeps of beach, and we've dropped $310K to get to pretty much where we are right now, and where we arrived at, I think it was 2 years ago, and where we arrived at, I think it was 5, 6 or 7 years ago. So, seen this before and I won't be supporting this expenditure.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Clark, go ahead if you wish.
Sorry, thanks, Mayor. I'm chuckling at Andrew's history lesson and perhaps somewhat cynical approach after 9 years. However, I think his wisdom, there is possibly wisdom in what he said. So, yeah, this once. So, in terms of this proposal, this isn't going to. The outcome of this. Firstly, this is a review. It's not going to result in better signage. It's not going to result in more local laws. That would come back from the review, and any recommendations would then need to be separately funded and considered. So this amount of money, as Councillor Bond said, is purely to do a review. And it's not going to make anything easier because there's no assumption of what's going to come back to councillors to consider. And as I've seen in my short time, it is a very passionate area, and the animal management plan was just completed, and yet here we are already discussing the dog policy again. The petitions that we've received petitions for and we've received petitions against. We've received emails for and emails against, and no review is going to change that. I don't think there's an assumption that we've got it wrong. Yes, there might be more dogs because of COVID, but these things ebb and flow, and I'm not sure where the assumption is that we have it wrong because there is some strong feedback to us, but there's equally, I've received just as much feedback not wanting change to the dog policy and people concerned with potential changes to the dog policy. So to pluck this policy out of the public space strategy or the animal management strategy and do something separate, I don't think is good policy practice. And for that reason and the others that I've just said, I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Who else would like to speak to this item? Okay, Councillor Martin, would you like to close?
I have real sympathy with Councillor Bond's position. I understand his frustration. And I'm new to this council, but certainly from what I've seen in my 15 months on the council, I believe that there is an urgent need to A, review what's happening at the moment, and B, make some substantive changes. And yes, it's easy to say let's put up better signage, but we need to find out where that signage should be. We need to consult, and Councillor Bond talked, 50 people come along. Well, if we're going to do this properly, we need to consult appropriately, and that's why I believe such a significant sum of money has been set aside. So it's not a matter of going out and talking to dog walkers as they walk on the beach, because then the non-dog walkers can come back and say that, you're not looking at an appropriate sample. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a proper stratified sample and get a very real view of what the people in Port Phillip would like, rather than have particular interest groups take over any sort of survey. And the end result will be that our parks and our beaches will be safer, and our families, our ratepayers and our visitors will be happier than they are at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Let's put that item, so we're in part 2 of report 13.2. All those in favour?
Can I request under division?
Yeah, under section 58, let's do it by division. I'll just say that, well, actually, I started it, so I need to call it. So all those in favour? All those against? That's carry. Councillor Consolo's asked for a division under 58. All those in favour? Councillor Copsey, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Martin, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Baxter. All those against? Councillor Clark, Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff. The motion is carried. Sorry, yes, the motion is part 2 of the item is carried. I now look for a mover to part 3 of item 13.2. Well, the recommendation, correct, under 3.6.1 is option B, but there is an opportunity for any councillor to move any other option that's listed there. Councillor Crawford, you'd like to move the officers' rec? No problem. Can I get a seconder for that? I'll just ask a clarifying question. We'll go to Councillor Copsey the second. Just whilst we're here, can I get a clarifying question of officers? What is the recommendation that Council was moving here today? Can I just get someone to clarify?
Through you, Mayor, it's option B, which is to extend rent relief at 30% turnover to the 30th of June, noting the net reduction in the surplus of that option.
Thanks, CEO. Councillor Crawford would like to speak to the item? No. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the item? Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Crawford, assume you don't wish to close. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very, very much. I'll now move to item 14, which is notices of motion. Councillors, we have one notice of motion tonight, which is item 14.1, and that is a motion raised by Councillor Bond in relation to adventure playgrounds. Councillor Bond, would you like to put your motion? Please feel free to read it out if you wish. It's been put on the agenda, so you do not have to.
Am I allowed to ask a question before I read it?
Yeah, go for it.
Just a question, if this motion is successful, what sort of timeline would we be looking at for the installation of the trampolines or reinstallation of the trampolines?
Sorry, I didn't fully hear the end of the question, but can someone help me out in terms of Councillor Carroll? Chris Carroll, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bond, for your motion in question. It is the intent of officers to replace the trampoline, and we'll be doing that as soon as possible. There's a report coming up to the executive leadership team this week or next week on some options, but I'll report back to you on specific implementation. It will depend on the option chosen.
Great. Any more questions, Councillor Bond? To your own motion? Yep. Okay, go. Again, you can read it if you wish, otherwise it's been listed. You do not have to.
I'll read it for the benefit of anyone who happens to still be listening at home. I, Councillor Andrew Bond, give notice that I intend to move the motion outlined below at the ordinary meeting of Council on 16th February 2022. And the motion is that Council reinstates the trampolines recently removed from the St Kilda Adventure Playground and the Skinner's Adventure Playground.
Great. Looking for a seconder for that motion, and thank you, Councillor Councillor, for seconding that. Councillor Bond, please feel free to speak to your motion.
I'll just speak very, very briefly. There was no supporting commentary here and the very short motion because I think I had about 10 minutes to get it in before the deadline, so I didn't really have time to write much. But other than this, yeah, look, I just think it would be wonderful to get these trampolines back into these adventure playgrounds. The adventure playgrounds are designed to be a risk-based play activity whereby kids can jump up and down on things and occasionally they'll get hurt, and so be it. It's not our job to sanitise these adventure playgrounds so to such a degree that they just lose all their all that's good about them and all that encompasses the risk-based play. It is our job to upgrade these playgrounds though, and I know, I was down at St Kilda, I think it was last Wednesday, I went and had a look at where the trampoline was. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that's getting old and getting worn, and it's been there for 40 years, but I know as a council we do have, if someone could correct me if I get the numbers wrong, it's about $2.5 million, which we're going to use at some point in time to upgrade that playground which is a significant investment in there. And what will go in there will continue to be the risk-based play, but upgrading what's coming to its end of life. And I think we've got $1 million for South Melbourne Skinner's Reserve. If I've got those numbers wrong, please someone correct me, to do exactly the same thing. So, this council is committed to these two adventure playgrounds. Combined, we're investing about $3 million in the next, I think it'd be the next 18 months into the two of them to improve them and ensure that, the equipment there meets what the purpose of these adventure playgrounds, but at the same time, we don't just leave old and decaying equipment there that's no longer safe or fit for purpose or dangerous to kids. We still do have that obligation as a council that we need to meet. So look forward to these trampolines going in and being reopened and the kids jumping up and down on them and having a lot of fun. So urge my fellow councillors to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. And clarifying question to Tony Keenan. I think the amount is 2.7 million for St Kilda and 1 million for South Melbourne. Is that right?
Through you, Mayor, I think that's about right.
Okay, great. And Councillor Consolo.
Thank you, Councillor Bond, for bringing this. The trampolines are magnets for kids. They patiently wait in the queue and wait for the timer to go off. The rules are followed. It's safe, one kid at a time. Not everyone can afford or physically fit a trampoline, but they're enjoyed by so many, and it's such a simple activity that is well liked. It's difficult to repair some equipment without the bigger project, and I acknowledge that there will be future works, but this is something that can be done to bring so much joy back to these adventure playgrounds for now.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Who else would like to speak to this item? Hand over you, Councillor Bond, to close if you wish. Or put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? No, that's carried unanimously. Councillors, now give you the opportunity under item 15 to provide reports as council delegates. Councillor Bond, go ahead.
I'd just like to provide a report as the council delegate to the St Kilda Festival. Point
of order? No. Okay. Point of order. We'll let you get away with that one, Councillor Bond.
I'd just like to congratulate the staff for putting on a magnificent event on the weekend, or on this week, not just a weekend, but over 9 days. When we made the decision to run the festival or to fund the festival back in August last year, I think it was, we committed to it. There was no guarantees it would ever take place. As we got closer and closer to the event, it looked like, well, we'd made the right decision. And then, mid-January, just 3 or 4 weeks ago, when all the COVID started to impact the tennis, and it looked like, oh no, this is probably not going to take place. But I think it's a tribute to a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work from our staff, led by Adele and Lauren and their festivals teams, and Holly and the rest of them, who've all just done such a great job to ensure we were able to do something down there for the St Kilda Festival. I know some people, there's been a bit of commentary on the crowds. Well, crowds are down everywhere at the moment, but the fact we were able to put an event on, I certainly enjoyed about 3 of the 6 days and went down there and had a great time. We were able to provide employment for musicians and the entertainment and events industry over 9 days, which is very important because that group has been absolutely smashed over the last 2 years. So for them to be able to get back out and get, just to feel like they're back at their workplaces again, which is only just starting to happen. So I just want to pay tribute to that team and congratulate them on all their hard work.
Thank you for doing that, Councillor Bond. I think we all agree with that. Councillor Copsey.
Oh, thank you. I have the pleasure, along with Councillor Martin, of being one of the council delegates to the LGBTIAQ+ Advisory Committee, which I'm very pleased to report had its inaugural meeting on Monday evening via Teams, sadly, but we'll get together before long face-to-face, I'm sure. This incredibly talented group of Port Phillip citizens and representatives of queer businesses and cultural institutions is going to be helping Council to shape its LGBTIAQ+ action plan over the coming months, which is going to be a fantastic asset for us to continue to celebrate our rainbow community and the contribution that they make to our city, as well as to strengthen Port Phillip's long and proud tradition of being an inclusive and welcoming city, and hopefully to extend us to the next phase of what that means in 2022. So we're really, really pleased. It was a fantastic meeting with already the incredible intelligence, experience and passion of those committee members on display, and I'm very, very excited about what's to come over the life of that committee.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey, and thank you to yourself and Councillor Martin for the service that you're providing to be on that committee also. Deputy Mayor Baxter, go ahead.
I'll be super quick, but just as the council delegate to the Friends of Suwai community group, I'd just like to remind everybody about the upcoming Friends of Suwai Trivia Night. that I spruik every year. And you know what would be really smart is if I actually had the date in front of me right now, which I don't. The 17th of March, which I knew. Thank you. So it's the 17th of March at 7 p.m. It's a wonderful trivia night to raise funds for all the great work that the Friends of Suai do in Suai, Covalima, in East Timor. And I encourage all of my fellow councillors who are available to come along and be on what will undoubtedly be the winning table, and I encourage any officers who may be available as well to come down as well, and probably come second or something. So, but it's going to be a great night.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and no pressure this year either. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Mayor, you and I, along with a number of other councillors, attended a function at the the Murphy Reserve ground on Saturday, where the Port Melbourne Mariners Baseball Club, one of the marvellous sporting clubs down at Murphy Reserve, put on a special luncheon to raise funds for breast cancer awareness. A number of councillors were there. It was a fantastic day, and I'd just like, on the record, to congratulate the Port Mariners and to thank all of those councillors who joined the Mayor and myself there for a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. And thank you all of you for highlighting the good work that you do outside formal council meetings, etc. It's important people know that. So thank you very much for sharing those experiences. Councillors, I now move to item 16, which is urgent business. Do you have any items of urgent business for us to consider this evening? There being none, I'll now move to item 17, which is confidential matters. Councillors, we have 2 confidential reports listed on the agenda. They are 17.1 substation proposal and 17.2 Fisherman's Bend funding strategy. I will now call upon a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public to consider the confidential items, and that's moved by Councillor Councillor and seconded by Councillor Martin. Now put that motion to all those in favour. It's carried unanimously. We'll now end the WebEx live stream, and thank all of you that have tuned in this evening or are watching this on the recording, and look forward to seeing you at the next council meeting, which is in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.